Alaska, a raw wilderness of dramatic mountain ranges, huge forests, frozen rivers, and barren plains. A place that pushes man and machine to the limit in one of the most intense environments on Earth. It's here that the United States military takes weapons and soldiers to the extreme, testing them in some of the harshest conditions on the planet. If they can perform here, they can operate anywhere, anytime. I'm Mac. I spent 10 years as a Navy SEAL, and this is Future Weapons from Alaska.
I'm Mac, this is Alaska, and it's time to experience some cold weather warfare.
While serving with SEAL Team 2, I spent a lot of time in Alaska. From my experience, this is one of the environments where you have to be at the top of your game. Alaska is just 55 miles from the coast of Russia. It's a crucial area of operations for the United States military. Its distant location and intense climate make it the perfect place to train soldiers.
We're good to go.
And take weapons to the limit. I've come to Delta Junction, a remote settlement right in the heart of Alaska. Just 250 miles from the Arctic Circle, it's an intense place to operate. And it's home to a very special facility, the U.S. Army's Cold Region Test Center, or CRTC. And I've been granted exclusive access to their winter weapons testing program.
This is probably the most challenging location that you could go to test your equipment.
Lieutenant Colonel Vince Malone is commanding officer of CRTC.
Well, CRTC came here and was established in 1949 on a permanent basis. And we were established because of lessons learned from World War II. Where we're situated right here in the interior of Alaska, we're protected by mountains on both sides, so you don't have the warming influence of the maritime seas coming in. So you can reach these temperatures of minus 50 that we're looking for here at the Cold Region Test Center.
If the United States soldiers and equipment can excel here, then they are ready for battle almost anywhere on the planet. That's why they've chosen Alaska to test the 21st century workhorse of the U.S. Army. When the Army wanted a flexible, high-speed, mobile vehicle that would support soldiers of the future on tomorrow's front line, they made the Stryker. When they wanted it to have firepower, they turned it into the mobile gun system. Stryker is an 8-wheeled armored combat vehicle that provides speed, stealth, and firepower in combat. It's been in service with the U.S. Army since 2003, and I've already seen it in action. There are 10 Stryker variants, each having a special role to play on the battlefield. The Stryker Mobile Gun System, MGS, is the big slugger. Its presence is a huge advance in infantry support firepower, and the MGS is here to be tested in the Arctic environment.
When the mobile gun system wants to make a big impression, it uses the 105 cannon, which fires every 105 round in the Army's arsenal. This is the commander's station. Here, he has a panoramic 360-degree viewer that operates independent of the turret itself. This is where he sits to make all his business decisions, and if he needs to get somebody's attention, he has a 50 caliber Browning machine gun to do so. Put all of this together and you can easily see why the Stryker MGS takes the concept of infantry support vehicle and blasts it deep into the 21st century.
Versatility is key, and that's why this Stryker is at CRTC.
You never know where the next war is going to be. We want to be prepared on all fronts, and that's why we do testing in the cold.
CRTC Test Officer John Vigato is the man putting Stryker MGS through its paces.
At 25 below, we'll test certain vehicle parameters. We want to see how the brakes work. We want to see how the suspension works. We want to see how the gun fires, if cold affects accuracy, things like that.
The first major test for the Stryker MGS, firing that mighty 105mm cannon. As the round is unleashed, the muzzle blast is as big as the vehicle itself. The huge force of this projectile rocks the 22-ton Striker. Check out that shockwave. The Striker appears to be easily handling the stress of firing the cannon in these conditions. But they're also testing the ability of the MGS to accurately deliver the 105mm rounds. The thick and dense cold air affects the projectile and changes the ballistic characteristics of its trajectory. Because the operational potential of the Striker MGS is highly classified, I can't reveal the results of the test, but I can show you the full power of the Striker MGS firing 6 rounds a minute.
How's that platform handle itself when you're firing the gun?
It's a very large gun for a light platform. It's much lighter and faster than an Abrams tank, if you will.
You can actually fire this from that 90-degree turn while you're shooting it, and it will not roll the vehicle. This vehicle is actually incredibly stable to fire that bigger weapon system.
It is. 360-degree firing and on-the-move capabilities. It's an excellent platform.
Coming up, we see how Striker performs when it tackles multiple firing while on the move. I'm in Alaska. It's where the U.S. Army tests their latest weapons for Arctic warfare. Weapons like the Striker MGS.
The Striker mobile gun system has everything you need for a firefight.
We've already tested the 105mm cannon, but firing a weapon up here is only half the battle. If you can't get it into position, then it doesn't do you any good.
Strikers on ice. It's quite the ballet show, if you will.
CRTC Test Officer John Vigato has to test every component of this vehicle to make sure it can withstand extreme Arctic temperatures. For Striker to succeed in this brutal environment, an Arctic lubricant must be used to ensure peak performance.
Oil has different viscosities at different temperatures, and getting the automotive portion of things to work is a challenge.
What's it look like when you start to see like those fluids, which are basically the lifeblood of the vehicle so it can move, freeze? What's it like seeing that?
It pains you. You can tell that just listening to an engine run with the wrong oil in the wrong temperature, the metal sounds, the things that you hear going wrong.
It's the job of the team at CRTC to test machines and their vital components to the limit.
For a company or a battalion to go into this environment and leave everything running just to be warm can't be done.
Dan Coakley is one of the dedicated test officers.
So you're going to show me what happens with fluids at the extreme temperatures?
Yes, I am. We have to think about things like how do we keep military vehicles running in this environment. So what we do is we use very specific fluids in an Arctic environment.
At temperatures below zero, fluids like oil and antifreeze start to behave very differently. The colder it gets, the more radical the transformation, and it's this change that can cause engines to break down.
If you just take these and take a look at them indoors.
But it's not only liquids that alter at extremely low temperatures. Shock absorbers, fan belts, fuel lines, electronic cables, and even boots react completely different in this environment.
All right, let's go take a look outside and let's see what actually happens.
Okay.
Today, it's already a bone-chilling 20 degrees below zero. But remember, temperatures can go as low as -50 and -60. All machinery and weapons need to be tested thoroughly.
To test the extreme temperatures, we need an extreme machine. What am I looking at here?
You're looking at a cold chamber. This cold chamber was actually developed so that we can put rocket pods into it. We can set a whole pod of rockets in it at one time and condition the rounds.
Now, what temperatures are we looking at here? -53. All right, let's go through it. Let's see what we got. There's an awfully big, very cold vampire in there. And that's a place I'd rather not be.
The materials I saw earlier have been exposed to extreme Arctic temperatures. Time to see if they behave differently.
Here's a couple of the fuel hoses, and if you just listen to these, you can just hear the difference.
That
and that's what happens.
Oh, my day is over. Everything's ruined. Now you're stuck out there in the middle of nowhere, right?
And you've got a fuel leak.
And you got a fuel leak.
Yeah, you've
Great.
got a problem.
Can't touch it.
That's right, because what happens when fuel gets on your clothing and hands?
Instant frostbite.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the fluids.
All right, antifreeze.
The environment is so harsh here, even antifreeze freezes.
And it'll actually clog up your system, and you'll have an overheated car at 30 below.
Perfect. Remember that, boys and girls, when you're in the Arctic. I mean, everything has to work so much harder, right?
All work conducted outdoors in our environment takes an extra effort. Everything you plan on it taking much longer than if it was a nice 70-degree day.
But that applies to machine as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The environment is hard on the machine, too.
But the Stryker is a tough machine. Despite the unforgiving conditions, it has performed well. The team has assessed the gun's recoil, the hydraulic system, the engine's performance, and much, much more. The vital lessons they've learned here in Alaska will make sure that the Stryker MGS will be ready to fight anywhere on the planet.
Stryker testing is a world in and of itself. Having the vehicle out here and being able to shoot it and put it through its paces in this environment is a truly unique experience. It's the highlight of this year's testing for me.
And how important is that to you personally, that it's ready to do that job in Arctic environments?
No, extremely important to me personally. That's makes me feel personally like what I'm doing matters. We're protecting soldiers' lives. That's our bottom line out here.
For the Stryker Brigade combat teams, the MGS provides the firepower needed to ensure mission success and survival for the infantry soldier. For them, it's vital to know that the MGS can perform in this extreme environment. Coming up. Great, you can make a weapon to perform in the Arctic, but what about the personnel that have to use them? I take a look at just how soldiers survive in temperatures of -50. Alaska is the perfect place to experience cold weather warfare. But it's not just about machinery that has to operate in freezing temperatures. Soldiers need to know the tricks that'll help them cheat death in temperatures well below zero.
Alaska may seem like a winter wonderland, but when you're out here in the wilderness and the temperature drops and the cold winds blow, the only thing you can rely on is yourself, your training, and your gear.
Frostbite and hypothermia have been silent killers of soldiers for centuries. In my training here, I learned that operational effectiveness was all about overcoming fear of the cold and being prepared.
In World War II, in 1944 alone, Americans reported 46,000 cases of frostbite. In this environment, you gotta stay on your toes, or you might lose them.
In the Arctic, it's more than just feeling the bitter cold. It permeates everything, all the way down to the bone.
Some people come directly from the city, never been in the field before, and once they leave, they've slept out in the cold. It's below zero, and they can say, we can do it now. And that mental attitude is what gets people through most survival situations.
The Arctic Survival Training School, nicknamed Cool School, is at Eielson Air Force Base near Fairbanks. This is where they train their pilots and support staff to survive against all the odds. Master Sergeant Robert Blanchard is the school's superintendent.
We teach them everything from how to build shelters, signaling, how to build fires out of the different types of woods you find in the Arctic, and how to get water, catch food, things of that nature. So if they do happen to go down in a bad environment like this, they're able to survive and get rescued.
About 700 people a year brave the rigorous 5 days of survival training. It is the only center of its kind in the Department of Defense.
What you put in is what you get. You guys want to skip a few steps? Might make you a little colder tonight. So again, adhere to those principles. That's what's going to keep you warm.
Even people that have been up here for years, it just takes one mistake, and it can cost you your life or the life of someone with you.
Veteran survival expert Dave Hoffman shares some of the secrets of the Winter Warrior.
So, tell me some of the things that are really important just when you're talking about surviving in this environment.
You've got to understand the environment that you're in. You've got to know the limitations of yourself, the human body, and the equipment that you've got, as well as the training that you've got.
Let's go, let's go.
You need to have water. You know, water is the drink of life, so to speak. And without it, it leads to frostbite, hypothermia, and then food. And I list food last because you can go about 30 days without food, especially a guy like me who carried a little extra weight. I can survive for a long time without food. But without water, the elements will kill you in a heartbeat.
But drinking water isn't the only key to survival. If you're stranded in this environment, you are going to have to find a way to warm up your body. And remember, out here, warm is a relative term.
So if I'm going to build a fire out here, what's the first thing I need to do? Find a place to put it. For me, I'm going to use this spot right here, so what do I need to do? Clear it out.
Once they found a safe spot, Staff Sergeant Jason Clapper briefs the trainees about how to build and light a fire in cold, wet conditions.
Across the length of my platform. There I go. Now I'm ready to go. All that fine tinder. And these are all pretty much the same thing, just a large metal match. This is one I've just mounted into a handle. Set it right to the center of your tinder. You're gonna get that going. Once that's got a good flame, put that up over the top. And there we go.
When you are freezing, building a fire is crucial. But when you're waiting to be rescued for days, you have to be able to build a survival shelter.
We talked about life forms being hazardous. That includes trees. Okay, so we want to look out for any of those dead standing trees. You guys remember that 45? All right, looking out here, scanning around. Is the spot pretty good?
Yes, sir.
It is? All right, you guys, I'll pay you. Look straight up. What's that giant thing sitting in the tree? A tree branch, right? Or we call it a widowmaker. You never know when that thing's going to slip out and fall down.
What we have here, Mac, is the start of a thermal shelter. And basically what it does is it works off of the heat of the earth. Okay, you want to build a structural frame out of, you know, whatever trees you have available. You want to cover it with some kind of impervious material, you know, plastic bags, plastic sheet. If you had jumped in, you know, you have a parachute just to keep the snow from falling through. It makes it a little bit more efficient. Okay, then you want to cover it with about 6 to 8 inches of snow. And that snow will compact together and melt together almost like concrete, and will build a solid wall. Now, even at like 30 and 40, 50 below zero, the thermal shelter is probably your best bet for long-term survival.
As darkness closes in and the trainees prepare for another night of braving the cold, they have a moment to reflect on what they've learned so far in the last few days.
Preparation, key to success. If you're prepared and you know what's going on and you have the tools and the resources, everything will be just fine.
But for soldiers in the field, it's not just about surviving in this brutal climate. It's about thriving. Coming up, I'll share more inside tips about operating as a soldier out here in the Alaskan wilderness. And we get up close and personal with one of the very latest battlefield cloaking devices. An Arctic climate is unforgiving. Traveling across this hostile terrain means leaving the warmth of any shelter and getting on your skis.
You don't need to be a downhill god to be a winter warrior. What you do need to know is how to survive and thrive in this environment, no matter how cold it gets, so that you can complete your mission.
We get the soldiers out here, we want to educate them. They need to know that they can survive out here.
Greg Biggs is first sergeant at the Cold Region Test Center.
But a lot of guys, they're amazed. They walk outside and their nostrils, the nose instantly freezes up and they just can't believe it. So they're just, and they, you know, like I said, they don't think they can survive. Everything you do in a normal unit, you do here, but it's complicated by the cold weather, the snow.
And that includes something as simple as getting from point A to point B.
Performing out here tactically is challenging. All your movement is easy to see. Sound carries, and no matter where you go, you leave tracks.
Tracks could lead the enemy right to you. All the more reason to make sure your weapon is in working order, and that's no easy task in freezing conditions.
This M4 will do the job, no matter what environment you're in, but you gotta take care of it. One of the quickest ways to take care of it is puts lubrication in there, but you're probably gonna want something that can handle those minus temperatures, something that won't freeze up too badly. Ice is gonna get in there, water is gonna get in there. You've gotta constantly work that action as you're moving through the day. When you're dealing with a weapon, you have to wear contact gloves. You don't want your fingers freezing to this metal.
One of the things you have to be conscious of at all times is the muzzle. You're skiing around, you fall down, and all that snow gets inside there. Quick way to do it, maybe put some tape on it. You can also add a muzzle cover like that. When you need to fire, it'll go right through that, no problem. Put all of that together, slap that in, no problem. And you'll have a weapon that works. Fighting in this environment is a huge challenge. Soldiers need all the help they can get. And that includes having weapons that are specifically adapted for fighting in extreme cold. That's crucial for the ultimate winter warrior, the sniper.
The key to it is understanding the cold weather.
Weapon consultant Frank Fletcher is a former sniper with the British Army's Parachute Regiment.
The human body is pretty tough. Even at sub-zero temperatures, you can still operate. It's particularly tough as a sniper because you've got to spend long periods keeping still. But snipers are historically extremely effective in cold environments, and they can actually do a lot of damage.
One sniper can change the whole dynamic of the battlefield, particularly in Arctic conditions. But to be effective at their job, they need a reliable sniper system. Accuracy International, based in England, has developed a weapon for the sub-zero sniper, the Arctic Warfare Super Magnum. Already used by Special Operations Command in the United States, the Arctic Warfare Super Magnum is being issued to snipers in the British military. It's a bolt-action rifle with a range of over a mile. It fires the incredibly powerful .338 caliber Lapua round, considered by many experts as the best round ever made.
It's a heavy bullet, very useful if you're wearing body armor. Remember in the Arctic, we wear lots of clothing and stuff. 7.62 at long range is going to maybe be pushed to penetrate that. This will certainly shoot through it.
When temperatures drop to 50 below, it's so cold you can't even touch the weapon without gloves. They even designed a trigger housing large enough to fit a gloved finger. But the most innovative part is in the design of the bolt.
This is a typical bolt from a standard rifle. As you can see, it's fairly smooth and it's designed to lock tight inside the rifle. You're going to get a build-up of ice and snow on it, and it's going to freeze.
Because they are these flat surfaces, the two pieces are really close to freezing together almost.
That's it, and there's no leverage to break the bolt open to manipulate it.
Okay, so how did you solve that problem?
Okay, well, I'll show you. I'll illustrate it like this. Okay, there you go. Let's see if the grooves cut in. A number of grooves.
Okay. And you're saying because of these grooves now, you have enough of an airspace that I can break free that ice just because of those small little grooves.
Yeah, and the other thing is if you're using an Arctic lubricant, it's going to sit in the wells of those holes. So again, that's going to act to stop it freezing.
And for long-range shooting, they've made some modifications. They've added a muzzle brake to limit the flash, reducing the chance that the sniper will be spotted. A sniper's job isn't easy at the best of times, but operating in the Arctic has its own unique challenges.
Conventional sniping in the Arctic would take twice as long. So your planning phase to move into an FFP, which is your final fire position where you're going to take your shot, would take twice as long to get in there. Once you're still, you start to get cold.
Judging the winds, elevation, temperature, the bullet drop, all that stuff, you're pushing it to the extreme in Arctic temperatures.
Very hard taking that shot when you're sitting there shaking, which invariably happens, isn't it? Very hard, isn't it?
It's very hard.
For winter warfare snipers that need to be able to count on a weapon to drop their target in one shot, the Arctic Warfare Super Magnum is a rifle designed to do that job. Next, over the frozen terrain of Alaska, fighter pilots are tearing up the Arctic sky. I'm in the frozen wastes of Alaska. In this open and barren terrain, your every move can be seen from miles away. If you want to see the enemy before he sees you, then you want eyes in the sky. I've come to see one of the smallest UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, deployed with the United States military, the Raven.
It's small, compact, it's man-carried. So when the scouts need to go out on a foot mission, they can carry this in the ruck. Total weight is only like 17 pounds for the entire system.
In minutes, minutes, soldiers can deploy it to give instant over-the-horizon information using Raven's 3 day, night, and infrared cameras. These feed real-time images so soldiers instantly know what the enemy is doing.
Check LOO settings. LOO settings are good.
Today, they're working with the U.S. Air Force. The Raven is locating targets for airstrikes.
What they want us to do is they want us to observe over here while the jets are flying over. Okay, they're going to be about 1,000 feet. We still need to count below that. Drop clear.
In this environment, the launching of any aircraft presents a number of problems. Number one, being a runway, but not with Raven.
We're good to go.
Soaring to 1,000 feet, the Raven's onboard cameras scan the ground for targets.
So we need to put in a 1 to 4 inch up here.
The Raven can fly to target areas automatically using GPS navigation, or the operator on the ground can take over and fly it remotely.
See if you got video.
Operating in this environment presents its own unique set of challenges.
What's it like testing this in a cold weather environment?
Challenging, yeah. There's, I mean, this is anything you use. Cold is going to affect anything, especially in the negative temperatures we have here. But that's one thing you do. You test it, you learn from it, and you send it back to the company and organizations, and they can make it better. That's our job.
And Alaska gives us a chance to test it in the extreme. The battery life in the cold can be depleted. Just working around those extremes and figuring out how to actually use it in whatever environment we're in.
But as far as operating in the cold, you just kind of, you got to do it, you know. Suck it up and drive on.
That's it, right? You got to suck it up and drive on.
These images can be fed to other units and integrated into the digital battlefield.
So it essentially goes right onto the network. And once you have like a striker node out there or another striker node, it doesn't matter. It's carrying part of that network, so it can feed it to one striker. And if it can feed it to one striker, that striker can feed it to the whole entire battle space.
And it's not just between the Army either. Today we were out here testing it and we were linking up with the Air Force. It's something that goes across branches.
If the troops on the ground need to call for close air support, the Raven gives you the information you need. Time to take out some targets. The Raven's images have helped identify the targets, and these pilots now have all the necessary information to lock on and destroy them. But how does the data get to the pilot? That's the role of the U.S. Air Force, Air Support Operations Squadrons.
The role of the 3rd Air Support Operations Squadron is to provide close air support to Army units on the ground.
Captain Eric Sobecki is the Air Liaison Officer for the squadron.
We're able to control aircraft, put weapons on target, and neutralize any target that the ground commander sees fit.
Grizzly 1-1, prosecute targets 1 and 2, and terminate.
How we do our job is there's JTACs, or Joint Terminal Attack Controllers, that are with the Army on the ground. If something arises that they need aircraft to come in and drop weapons on or do something for, they will call over the radio through the proper chains, request that air support, and then that aircraft will attack that target.
One of the main fighters used in Alaska is the F-16. I've come to Ailson Air Force Base, home of the 354th Fighter Wing. The F-16 has been around for 30 years. It's constantly being upgraded, though, so proving it in Arctic conditions is vital. But what are the challenges for both pilot and aircraft when deployed in Alaska?
Well, flying in Alaska in the wintertime is very challenging, not only because of the cold temperatures, but the extreme weather that we see.
Captain Mac McGilvray is an F-16 pilot with many years of experience in Arctic operations.
It's what you got to wear, what you have to be trained on as far as egress goes, what our maintenance crews are fighting through, what the temperatures are, how long they can actually be out and be safe. What it does to the ground as far as the runway. Any sort of moisture hits that runway is going to freeze instantly, and just the temperatures at which things start to break. Rubber becomes harder, the oil becomes thicker, because, I mean, it's negative 40, goodness, it's awful cold.
There are strict rules when operating in this harsh environment if the aircraft is to remain operational.
One, the hangar doors behind me, we have certain time limits that they can be open. Below 0 degrees, we've got 15 minutes. So we've got 15 minutes to get the doors open, get the jet cranked up, and get it out. -40 is our minimum. We will not have guys out working on the aircraft, and we will not fly if it's -40 or below. Because at that point, if you do have to bail out, folks are going to have to come out and get you. It's probably not a good idea to have those folks braving those elements to come out and get you. So we have the cutoff at -50. We will not fly into that area.
Despite the harsh conditions, the F-16 excels in Alaska.
Well, the F-16 performs incredibly here in an Arctic condition. And a lot of that's based on the engine performance in the thick air. When the engine can suck in this really dense cold air, it will kick it out the back, and it will kind of sink you back in the sea a little bit. Your acceleration is better. Your performance as far as your just top speed at lower altitude is better. Also, with this thick air, it gives the wings something to dig into when you go into a turn, so you can get on the G's faster. You know, the F-16 can pull up to 9 G's, and you can actually get there a little faster in this thick, cold air. So it's kind of sporty. I like it. Alaska is not only a great place to live, but it's a great place to train. The terrain here is incredible. The mountains, the openness, and the airspace. We've got airspace here that is the size of Indiana.
That's why Alaska is the perfect place for pilots to push their aircraft to the limit. Coming up, what if you could use the fog of war to your advantage? On the battlefield, soldiers use the natural features of the landscape for concealment. But what are you going to do if there's no place to hide? What if there was a way to suppress the enemy's ability to see you? Enter the M56 E10 smoke generator, a state-of-the-art system that has the power to cloud the enemy's mind.
The M56 E10 gives that battlefield commander the ability to obscure our movements, the ability to confuse the enemy or deceive them in some sort of way.
Captain Rob Barnhill is from the Joint Project Management Office developing the M56 E10.
This system does give that battlefield commander the ability to conceal our movements, ability to use it in urban operations, ability to move soldiers out if they've been injured or need a medevac. It gives them the chance, a window to disrupt the enemy focus.
Mounted on the back of a Humvee, the smoke generator contains a turbine engine that pumps out exhaust gases at an incredible 1,000 degrees. This super hot gas is then injected with oil, creating a massive smoke cloud, cloaking the battle space. Historically, it's a proven tactic for confusing the enemy.
Smoke's been used on the battlefield for centuries. It was used in the Roman times for flushing out troops and moving people around.
Engineering technician Tim Kushner knows just how effective smoke generators are.
It was certainly used and documented during the Civil War, and the Department of the Army has been actively working on smoke generating systems since World War I. At one time, smoke systems were hand-carried, moved around the battlefield by soldiers. They realized they couldn't do that. They weren't going to keep up with the fast-paced movements of M1 tanks, so they had to develop something to keep along with that.
This system takes the concept of smokescreen to another level. The Humvee keeps the smoke generator on the move, very important in today's constantly moving battlefield environment. But that's not the only selling point. This generator has the capability to confuse enemy radar. In its canister, it looks just like feathers. Once deployed, it's called millimeter wave particle smoke. It creates dozens of false radar signals.
There'll be so many blips on the screen you can't distinguish between an actual target and what's a false target.
Ben Filner is a CRTC test officer responsible for the smoke generator.
The millimeter wave material floating in the air is a carbon fiber, and it looks like large amounts of cat hair flying up and through the air. What it is designed to do is absorb the radar very much like the visual smoke absorbs or blocks your vision, this absorbs the material. It does not allow reflections to go back. It's very much like in the World War II bombers when they would throw tinfoil out the back of the aircraft to confuse radar. This material goes up in the air and does this very same thing. The chaff would be heavy and it would fall to the ground. This stuff will stay up in the air as long as the smoke cloud is present. And it can drift for, depending on wind conditions and weather conditions, considerable distances, so you can blanket an entire area.
It means vehicles can travel through hostile terrain almost unseen by the enemy. What's more, it's safe.
It was a big challenge to find the right material that was able to do the mission, but also not hurt anybody while doing the mission, while considering the environmental effects, the wildlife effects, and the effects on humans.
So why test it in Alaska? The answer, the Army wants to make sure it works for soldiers in every kind of battlefield environment. Alaska is one of the most challenging environments on Earth. A soldier has to be fit enough to fight and smart enough to thrive in these harsh conditions. And that soldier needs the very best equipment to do his job.
Alaska is the perfect place to bring great troops, great technology, and great training together so the military can perform in any environment. Just awesome.